If building and exiting a business, immigration, and just trying to live a good life as a decent human have taught me anything, it's that I thought this would be simpler. Life is astoundingly, beautifully complex, and I want to talk about it. Welcome to I Thought This Would Be Simpler. Dating after divorce and why she thought it would be simpler. In this episode, Avril Reitz is opening up about her journey back into the dating world and the perils and adventures that has unlocked, but also the really meaningful journey of self-exploration and getting to know who she is now as an adult post-divorce. Avril is the founder of Illuminate Yourself, and through coaching and facilitation, she helps individuals, leaders, and teams close the gap between who they really are and how they show up in the world. Avril knows that in this type of work, there is no one-size-fits-all approach, so her superpower is really meeting people exactly where they're at and creating a safe space for something authentic to bubble to the surface. After listening to this episode, I hope that you'll agree that this conversation was nothing short of authentic and at the same time, kind of entertaining. If something about Avril and the work that she does resonates with you and you'd like to get in touch with her, you can find her details in the show notes. And now, let's get into it. Dating after divorce. I thought this would be simpler. Avril Reitz, what did you think would be simpler?
Dating after divorce. So much simpler. It is not. It is not.
I am so excited to unpack this. This is juicy, juicy, juicy. All right. Dating after divorce. Where to start? When and how did you know that you were actually ready to start dating after divorce?
That is the $1,000,000 question. And I don't know if you ever really know 100% for certain. For me, I knew that I was, in quite a vulnerable state during that divorce process. And honestly, for quite a while, the idea of actually having to spend time with any men in a sort of romantic setting was just completely not on the radar. There's a lot of, I suppose, behind the scenes healing that needs to happen, and that looks different for everybody. For me, I took a while just to settle into my own space, getting used to living on my own, not having somebody um, in the bed next to me, which is pretty cool, just by the way. And I think, people start asking you, oh, so do you feel like you're ready? And you kind of just go, like for me, it was like a gut instinct thing. And I was like, no, not there yet. I'm still just trying to find my feet. And I also didn't want to go in, like, feel like I was jumping into something. For me, it's a serious thing. And I got to a point where somebody had said to me, I've got this guy that I'd love for you to meet. And I was like, okay, that doesn't seem like the worst idea in the world. And it kind of went from there. So, yeah, I think it's very much a gut thing. Well, for me at least. And that's how it started.
Yeah, I suppose the thing that felt unapproachable for a while over time feels a little bit more approachable and doable. And then it's okay, I can do this. And as you said, there's a lot of vulnerability in that getting back out there and that healing that's already happened and that layered journey that you're going through.
And nothing can prepare you for it, until you're there. I always used to look at people getting divorced or people that were unhappy, and you kind of go like, oh, I mean, yeah, it seems like a big deal, but how hard can it really be? And then you're in the thick of it, and then you're like, oh, I can understand why a lot of people don't do this, why they would rather just sort of stay where they are. So yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a big topic of courageousness in that as well. You know, the courageousness to say, look, this marriage isn't what I need. If you know, obviously, divorce comes about in many different ways.
Yeah.
So there's the courageousness to walk away from something, and
Uh,
then there's massive courageousness to walk back into something.
and figuring out, I guess, who you are throughout this, because, in the marriage, you identify with certain roles and you become a version of yourself in that sort of space. And then all of a sudden you step out of that space and there's almost a sense of, in terms of identity, like, oh, okay, who am I now? Like, what am I representing? Yeah, how does this look, this next chapter? So it's almost like a sense of needing to, it's like pressing the reboot button, like Wi-Fi not working. Okay, let me go and just reboot and then hope for the best.
If,
So
if only it
yeah, and
was
then
as simple.
exactly, exactly. Take pop a blue pill, pop a green pill, pop a whatever. It's like the Matrix. Yeah, and then I guess it's finding, kind of meeting myself, like who actually am I outside of that marital space, and that's a journey in itself.
What did that journey look like for you? I love that phrasing of meeting myself. What was that process like for you?
So I think that's the hard part of just really having to, first of all, for me, it was like really sitting in the feelings and the emotions, which I must say, for a while I avoided. I was in a little bit of a survival mode of just, okay, I know what the end goal is. So you're just taking the steps, it's a one day at a time kind of a process. But I had to really get real and honest with myself. Like, okay, where am I at? How is this making me feel? And I think even if you're the one that initiates the divorce process, you actually speak those words like, this is what I want. It's still really, really hard. I think there's a misconception that, if you're the one that asked for it, that, oh, it's going to be a walk in the park. So yeah, just really getting honest with myself, really sitting in what was going on for me. And I suppose that's where the layers started sort of coming up. And one day you're like, oh, I can do this. This is cool. This is fine. And then the next day you wake up and you just feel absolutely shattered and heartbroken and you questioning like, oh my gosh, have I made the right choice? Um, and there's so much uncertainty. And for me, I think there was an element of really getting comfortable, becoming more okay with uncertainty, which for somebody who likes structure and you want to feel like you're in control, it's like
And that uncertainty, that riding the roller coaster of today is a good day, but then you may wake up tomorrow and know that maybe tomorrow you'll feel shattered. On those days, like sitting with the uncertainty, sitting with those feelings and emotions, but also knowing that this was something you needed, that you needed to ask for yourself. How are you how are you staying the course on the tough days?
So I think it's one of those things where it's not like you wake up one morning and you go, I just don't feel like being married anymore. It's definitely a process and there's lots of stuff that it's like a slow burn of stuff that kind of eventually gets to the point where you're like, okay, I've tried everything, we've done all the things and the therapies, and actually it's just there's no way forward actually other than making this decision. I think it's again that sense of presence and reminding myself of what it felt like being in that space of not feeling happy, feeling like there has to be more. Like this is, I'm just not feeling like I'm living my fullest, best life. And obviously, there's so much more to it than that. It's, I think we can simplify things. And then I think also just support structures for me were huge. So, having a coach that has known me and really walked a proper path with me throughout the last few years, having those sort of conversations, a sounding board, somebody just to put things back into perspective for you. Yeah, so there was just a lot of support, a lot of being, I guess, I mean, it sounds so like the buzzword of like just being mindful, but really it was having to be present and mindful and just remembering. And I did have, interestingly enough, I'd had a folder on my phone just of, the reasons, kind of what I was feeling, and what led me to making that final decision. So it was good for me to kind of refer back to that and tap into those actual feelings of like, geez, okay, I really felt claustrophobic. I felt sad. I felt unseen. I felt, whatever the feelings were. So yeah, it's definitely it's not easy though. And interestingly enough, I've had a lot of conversations recently with women who have been through a divorce process, and every single person, no matter what the reasons for their divorce were, have all said they hit roadblocks of I doubted my decision. I was like, "Oh, sure, but what have I done?" So I think it's completely normal, but it's perspective again.
I agree. I think it must be completely normal. It is such a massive life shift to navigate. But it's interesting to hear you describe the tools that you had to help keep you honest with yourself throughout, the support systems that you had around you to hold you accountable, but also hold you when you needed holding.
Exactly.
That folder that you had of reminders of
Mm,
these are the things that are not serving me, and to be able to refer back to that on the rock bottom days to remind you of why are we on this
yeah,
journey.
exactly. Exactly. And it's also, also being able to ask for help or ask for support. I think historically I've been someone you always want to show up strong, and it's not easy being in a vulnerable space because you almost associate that with like, oh, I don't want people to think of me as weak or I can't handle my life. So I think I also got to the point where I was like, it's okay to reach out and ask for the support that you need. And sometimes we don't know what that support looks like, but in talking to people that are like safe spaces for you, um, that was also really, really helpful as opposed to just sitting with it myself and, you kind of ruminating and driving yourself bonkers.
And that, I think, is another aspect of the courageousness, being courageous enough to say, hey, I'm not okay. I need help. I need support
Mm,
in the safe spaces.
mm.
So you made the courageous decision to stand up for, I'm not living my fullest and best life. I would like to get divorced. You are navigating the divorce proceedings. That's a roller coaster in and of itself. And then in that process, at some point, the idea of maybe going out with another human doesn't feel quite so intolerable anymore. What is I'm so curious about those first encounters. What did it feel like, and what did it look like when you started flexing your dating muscles again?
It is a very scary, overwhelming process. And I think the problem is, we watch all these movies and we see the TV shows, and you almost have this like expectation in your head of, oh, it's going to look a certain way and it's going to be like this romantic moment and we're going to run into each other's arms. It is not like that. At least it hasn't been for
Fucking
me.
rom-coms. Like, come
Bastards.
on.
Yeah, just setting us up for disappointment. So
Yep.
I think like expectationally for me, and that's why I love the topic of, that you deal with on your podcast in terms of in your mind, you're like, this shouldn't be hard. Not like I'm arrogant or overly confident, but I feel like I'm a catch. Like, who's not going to want a bit of this? And then you get out there and you're like, oh, okay, wait, but do I want any of that right now? And always there's that, putting your best foot forward, and the first few dates were interesting because I realized I felt this need to perform, like I was trying to prove something, and I was almost trying to, like, my own self-worth, I think, was tied into external validation and how other people would view me and engage with me. And I think now it's so cool actually to reflect on the growth that I've done. And so instead of going in going, oh, is this person going to like me? Oh, I'm better make sure my makeup looks like this and I'm wearing this and I'm so funny and just clever and just everything, the whole package. Um, I think now it's more, okay, but how do I feel when I'm in this person's presence? So it's become less performative, and that makes it more real. And I think also your gut. I've learned to go with my gut, um, and we override that gut instinct sometimes. And each time that I've overridden that gut instinct, I've then realized why I need to listen more to that intuition.
We live to regret ignoring our guts.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not because anybody's been terribly horrendous or complete psychopaths or anything, but I think there's just there's an alignment thing for me, and I've become quite aware of stuff that feels aligned for me and stuff that doesn't feel aligned. So, you meet someone and there's like a value. At our core, there's value systems that we have. And sometimes you just realize that you're just not on the same page in terms of those value systems. I mean, that's, quite a big foundational element that I think needs to be present. So, people can be really lovely and you can have a great conversation, but there's something that's just sitting there and you're like, mm, could I imagine taking that person home to meet my family, to meet my friends? What would that interaction look like? And often it was, yeah, no, it's just not going to work.
And I think that values alignment is so critical. You can be quite different people in a lot of ways, but if the values and the big rocks align,
Mm,
then
mm,
magic is possible.
yeah,
I want to come back to something that you said. You said initially there was, and dating is peacocking. It's basically just like a fancy kind of job interview. All that we're all doing when we're dating is trying to be like, look at me, I'm my best version of myself. I'm my prettiest, I'm my fanciest, I'm my funniest, I'm my cleverest. So it's truly just peacocking. But at some point for you, it shifted about being less performative and
mm,
more in the moment, it seems, and just connecting with the people that
yeah,
you're with.
yeah.
What facilitated that shift?
So I think there was a couple of things come up for me. So the one is I realized that actually going into all these different experiences, I saw it as almost an informational gathering session as opposed to I'm going in to meet my future husband. I have this saying, contrast brings clarity, and it's relevant to so many different elements in, well, my life specifically. So every time I experience something that is a contrast, it gives me clarity in terms of what I want or what I don't want. So I then shifted and I went, okay, these are opportunities to information gather and kind of have a look at what do I like? Because also dating in my 20s, before I met my husband versus dating now looks completely different because I'm a different, more evolved version of myself. So the things that were important then or weren't important then, now are important or aren't important. So um, I think it's just about refining what it is that you ultimately want and don't want. And then the other thing that comes up for me is I realized that, and probably through the coaching work that I've been doing, is we all operating from ego or fear. There's motivational forces that are driving the way that we're showing up in the world. So I chose to then look at people through a more compassionate lens of this person isn't a complete weirdo, but they're just operating from a space of feeling fearful of rejection or fearful of being seen as weak or whatever the case may be. That allowed me to kind of see the human behind the facade because it is, like you say, it's show ponying kind of a thing. And so for me, connecting more on a human level was, really important.
Love that idea of the human behind the facade
Mm,
because it's true, right? I know they say that first impressions are everything, but I think first impressions are the most unfair way to actually judge a person because most of us are at our most nervous and operating from fear or nerves
mm,
or our least authentic selves when we're nervous and that first interaction, in that first impression. And it feels like a very actually unfair way to judge people.
yeah, absolutely.
So you're a different person to who you were in your 20s, obviously. What you're looking for from a partner is different. What you're
Mm.
looking for from a relationship looks different. But how do you know what you're looking for now? What does that process look like of figuring out, okay, I'm starting to date again, but what do I want?
Yeah, so I think through all the contrasting experiences, and it kind of starts before you officially meet the person in real life, face to face. For me, it already starts in terms of the initial messaging and that sort of that process. So the way somebody shows up is like, are they consistent? Are they showing interest in me? Like, what is and it's hard to tell tone over messages, but there's certain things like some people you can tell that they're just like self interest is really high, or they're definitely not taking this seriously. So I think it's almost like we said earlier, interview process. It starts in that initial contact. So for me, the consistency, does this person come across as kind? Is there a level of emotional maturity and intelligence? Do I feel like I could have a decent, robust conversation with this person? Um, are they operating from a super ego space? There's so many things that you kind of pick up on and and then you meet the person in real life, and then either you've noticed that, okay, actually they are not similar to the way they came across in their messages. And then that can throw you for a loop as well. Like they come across completely consistent and level headed and moving in the right direction in life. And then you meet them in person and you have a conversation and you're like, was ChatGPT writing your messages for you behind the scenes? Yeah, so it's flip. Like, I
Yes.
could definitely
The-
write the book.
Yeah, the dating apps,
The dating apps.
they are an interesting experience and we're going to deep dive into that, but actually you were talking about the messaging side of things and it's quite funny. My husband and I met on Tinder. And so it is like 100% it's panning for gold, but every now and then you get a lucky strike. But the first message that he sent me after we matched was so many questions. He asked a question about every single line in my profile. And I opened it and I was like, hell no, this is way too intense. And I closed Tinder and I walked away. And for a few days, I just didn't respond to him. And then I went back and I was like, why did we match in the first place? Let me look at his profile. And true story, there's an adorable photo. I'm such a sucker. There's an adorable photo of him and his nephew, and they're walking into the sunset. Like, come on, it doesn't get
Oh,
cheesy.
really? Had you
And I
hook,
was like,
line,
oh,
and
but this
sinker?
completely. And I was like, oh, look at this cute photo. Let me just respond to this extremely long and intense list of questions. And here we are. But it was so close to just like, oh, I perceived him as so intense in that first message.
Yeah.
And 7 years later, I'm super glad that I went back and gave him some grace. But it's the dating apps. I mean, you have to make yourself an option. You have to put yourself out there. But damn, it's like warfare out there.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you've got all these Instagram, I don't know, I suppose my algorithm on Instagram now, like there's all sorts of interesting things that keep popping up. And the more you watch these things, the more it's going to give you what you've been paying attention to. There's people like unpacking the photos and the text, the answers that you're putting on your profile on these dating apps and some of the stuff. And you're just, oh my gosh, is this person for real? And, here on the other end is just this person just flipping doing their best and not necessarily knowing exactly what must I put on here. It's hard. It's not like there's a manual that goes, okay, put this in, don't put that in, show all your teeth, not half your teeth, don't wear glasses. It's, I think everybody's just like doing their best.
And I think that that's an important framing, right? Is obviously there's some catfish, there's some trolls, and there's
Yeah.
some monsters on the platforms for sure. But for the most part, a lot of people are just decent humans looking to meet decent humans.
Yeah.
And it's truly an exercise in panning for gold. And I also think this is why I struggle with a dating app profile is they're flat. They're one dimensional. And as people, we're not flat and we're so multidimensional. So, what was that journey into the world of dating apps like for you?
I think there's still such a stigma attached to using dating apps. And there's people that I've spoken to and they're like, oh no, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, why wouldn't you do that? And they're like, no, because, that would be a real last resort. It makes me seem like I'm really desperate and I can't meet somebody. And so for me, there was a little bit of like, I had to get my head around it. But at the same time, I was like, but where am I actually going to meet viable potential dating partners?
Exactly.
Like, where am I going to do that? I'm not hanging out in bars. Yes, I do some sporting activities, but and I live in an estate where it's mostly families and couples. So, and you also, don't want to, what is that saying? Like, you don't want to shit where you eat, basically. um, so I think it was just also being courageous and just putting myself out of my comfort zone. I think if I've learned anything, is that my biggest growth and learnings has come from just totally putting myself outside of my comfort zone. And so you kind of slowly dip your toe in. And first of all, you're looking at, okay, there's lots of dating apps. Where am I starting? So then that was like, ChatGPT and I have such an amazing bond. I always say if something happens to me, don't worry about sharing my texts or my WhatsApps, that I share with friends, but don't let anybody see my ChatGPT history. For goodness sake, that must just automatically implode the minute I'm no longer here. Then you kind of going, okay, what are the dating apps? So there were a couple, and you put yourself on there, and then the next thing, it's like this dopamine hit because all of a sudden you're getting all these messages and these likes, and it's I'm being seen, there's that validation thing that comes through, and you feel so excited and feeling really good about yourself. But then as you start actually looking a little bit more deeply into each person that's liking your stuff, you're kind of like, oh no, okay, not for me. I don't think I'm super full of nonsense, but there are times where, like, my own mother would say to me, okay, no, you're being ridiculous. You cannot be put off by something like that. Just give the poor oak a chance. So yeah, it's interesting, but it does. It becomes almost addictive, that idea of, being validated. And that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's a form of social media, right? And we know the psychology behind how it literally plays into it does the same thing for our brains as gambling. So I hear you. And going back to what we were saying earlier, I really, really wanted to trip and fall in the aisle of my local supermarket, and a handsome fellow caught me, and we looked lovingly into each other's eyes, and then wedding bells were ringing. Um, but it wasn't going to happen. You know, it does happen for some people, and it's annoying because I actually know a few people who have
No.
the most ridiculously romantic. I have friends who met. She was supposed to be on a weekend in Madrid with friends. He was studying in Stockholm and was in Madrid for a music festival. They happened to be staying at the same motel, or the same hostel, sorry. She needed to charge her phone, and he was drunk and didn't feel like going back to the dormitory. So he sat down on the couch next to her, and now they're married. And I'm like, you're amazing. I'm jealous and I hate you because your story is incredible. So it does happen for some people, but the thing is, that is the exception.
Yeah.
It is not the norm. And if the rest of us mere mortals want to meet a good human, we have to make ourselves an option. And I was the person who was like, I could never go on the dating apps. I could never. That's just beneath me. And it was my former business partner sat me down one day because I'd been through a terrible breakup. I'd done all the work to get myself back to okay, I'm ready to meet someone. And he was like, love, where do you think you're going to meet them? Like, you sit in an office all day. What are you hoping to achieve here? And he was the one who said to me, get yourself onto the dating apps and make yourself an option. And it's right. It's 100% right. But Lord, there's stories from the dating apps.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering, like, those people that we have the stories about, I wonder what stories they are telling their friends, you know, because in their mind, they're showing up completely, you know, like, I'm a catch. I'd love to hear, like, be a fly on the wall when they are telling their dating app nightmare stories to their friends and family.
I have a friend who went on a date with a dude she met on Tinder, and he was some sort of ex-special forces, something. And during the meal, looked at her and was like, how many weapons do you think I have on me right now? And she was like, and then he proceeded to start pulling weapons out of places.
No.
And she was like, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and made a very...
Climb out of a very tiny window in the bathroom. Falling into an alleyway on top of a dustbin.
Worth it. Totally worth it.
Jeez.
And that guy, like, he's like, he probably went back to his mates and was like, I don't know why, but my date disappeared halfway through the meal. What do you think happened?
Ghosted me.
She ghosted me. Oh, my word.
I was showing her my weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, I was showing her how accomplished, and yeah, we humans are so fascinating.
We are.
So fascinating. But my brother has this great saying where he's like, you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Yes.
And this is the dating thing. So you get on the dating apps, you start putting yourself out there. How do things start unfolding from there?
Oh, lots of information gathering, lots of contrast, lots of clarity. And I think in that process as well was me still on my own healing journey and still doing the work. Like, that's the one thing over the last few years I've always continually done work on myself, knowing that I wanted to become a better version. Certain triggers that always came up for me, I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore, need to do the work so that I can move on from the triggers. And so I think in that process, it was about me actually getting a lot more sort of connected with myself and who I actually am, stripping away the facade and the performance. I always did this like clown thing. So I'm like quirky and bubbly. And I think, you know, to avoid being abandoned, because sometimes I was like, well, if people see the real me, then maybe they're not going to like it. So then there could be an abandonment thing happening there. So I always used to do this clown thing. And I had to sort of start learning to strip that away and get back to, okay, without the performance and the theatrics, what if people actually do just like what's underneath all of that. But at the same time, I was like, but who is underneath all of that? So yeah, the more I got to know myself and I was just real and I started having probably more authentic, vulnerable conversations with people and just connecting on this different human level that I hadn't connected with people and myself before. Um, that kind of got me to just being actually more okay in my own skin with who I was, not relying so much on external validation. And I don't think it's realistic to say I absolutely don't care what anybody thinks about me, because I think a lot of us will still have an element of we do have concern about how people perceive us. Um, but I became a lot less driven by that, and stopped keeping myself small. Um, yeah, just because I was scared of not being accepted if I was a bigger version of me as well. And then you kind of, I guess I did end up meeting somebody and we dated for like 6 weeks. And that was probably the closest that I'd gotten to a more sort of, I don't know, whatever normal means relationship. But at the same time, as much as he was a really lovely, cool guy, he was not going to be my long term person. And to be honest, I'm not somebody that does flings and the one night stands. And for me, I'm happy on my own. So if I'm going to be with someone, it means that they're adding value to my life, I'm adding value to their life. And then it's a conscious daily choice. I want this to work. We're going to be together and let's see where this goes. Um, yeah, but then at the same time, I realized I needed that 6-week relationship to actually just make me feel special again, make me feel seen, make me feel wanted, desired, all of these things that I hadn't felt in such a long time. And so it was me connecting with the sense of aliveness. And I have this thing about I used to be really scared of death. And I think it came about like my grandfather, who I was really close to when I was 12, he passed away. And something just like there was a switch that happened in me. And I became really aware of this idea of mortality and that I'm not going to be here forever. And I used to lie awake at night and have this claustrophobic feeling of one day I'm looking at myself, one day I'm just not going to be here. And I grappled with that for a very long time, but also didn't really share it with anybody because it's a very vulnerable thing to be sharing. And started talking to my life coach about it, and I kind of eventually shifted the feeling and the narrative that I had around death. And I was like, I can't control death. That is inevitable. Like, that's going to happen. I can absolutely control how I'm choosing to live. And I don't just want to be on autopilot. I don't just want to be going through the motions. I actually want to feel alive. I want to be really living and enjoying and having joy. And so that shifted so much for me as well. And I think all of these things kind of contribute to making the hard decisions, being courageous, really stepping into shoes that you never thought you would.
I think that was a beautiful answer. There was so much amazing context in there. It almost feels like you went on a journey from performing Avril to being Avril in how you show up with people. And that's a beautiful journey to go through for you more than anybody else.
Yeah.
Because suddenly you're walking through the world with a different level of authenticity.
And you attract so many different things.
Yes.
Through that, I'm attracting even these types of conversations. You attract a level of depth and connection and just realness. And I think it's about relatability as well. I really love to be able to have conversations with people who can show up vulnerably and real, because I feel like I can relate to them better. And in that is that sense of belonging, sense of connectedness. So it's got a really positive sort of impact ultimately.
Theory. It's called the bubble theory. And it's not super well worded because I'm still trying to find the words for it. But Over the last few weeks, I've been talking about this more and more, and I feel like we all live in, and all of the most important conversations that we want to have are just a bubble away.
Mm.
And it's just a flimsy little bubble. All we have to do is pop it, and it just takes a tiny touch of the finger and the bubble pops. But until we choose to take the step to pop the bubble, we can't get to that next phase. So, wanting to have these vulnerable, honest, authentic conversations, if
Mm.
you show up that way into the space, you immediately pop the bubble for the people
Yes.
that you're connecting with because you make
Yes.
it okay. You make it
Mm.
safe. So, and again, we come back to the theme of courageousness, having the
Mm-hmm.
courage to show up and be, this is me, take it or
Yeah.
leave it, but
Yeah.
this is me being Avril, not performing.
Exactly. And there's so much, I must say, I have the sense of complete freedom and liberation in that shift. And it's almost, I feel like I was living inside this cave for a very long time. And then you eventually start peeking out of the cave and you're like, oh, wow, there's a whole another world out here. And then it's like you can't put yourself back in the cave. Once I've now left and I'm on the landscape and I'm, picking flowers and doing all the cool things, I don't want to go sit in that dark, dingy cave anymore. I can't go back there. So yeah, it's a bit of it's a snowball effect, but in a positive way.
But what a beautiful series of realizations and what a beautiful path of self growth. You don't want to
Yeah.
go back into that cave because you're not the person who emerged from it anymore.
Exactly, exactly. And again, it's about the contrast. Because I've now experienced the contrast of that, I know very clearly that I don't want to go back to that previous space. But then I also have this sense of, if I look at things from earlier years, even last year this time, I have to appreciate all the previous versions of myself because they were all just doing their best with the knowledge and the experience and the tools that they had at that time. Um, but what a gift to get to this place and to see that progress and to use my experience also to be able to share and guide and support and help other people. And that's one of my biggest sort of desires that I'd like to achieve is through my experience being able to support and just add some glimmers of hope, for other people going through big life transitional stuff.
And I think that's also why conversations like this are so important. And it's dangerously easy for us to look back on previous versions of ourselves and chastise ourselves and criticize ourselves. But girl, all of the previous versions of Andy helped Andy get here today. And I have this really weird mental analogy of I picture myself playing Mario Brothers and I'm just like la 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 ding 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 collecting those gold coins as I go. And those are all of the life experiences that I'm collecting, like ding 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 ding, here we go.
Exactly, exactly.
And you keep leveling that up. And each level of Andy has all the experience from the previous levels. It's if we're not constantly evolving and growing and out evolving ourselves, what's
Mm,
the point?
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
It's there's this sort of stagnant place, and I suppose it's always about, do we have the growth mindset or we're going to have a fixed mindset? And I can understand why people often will be more in the fixed mindset space because it's hard. It's hard to challenge yourself and to be real with yourself. It really does take guts. But at the same time, on the other side of that comfort zone, that cheesy saying is where the best growth and all of the magnificence and awesomeness lies.
You have to be willing to step into the uncomfortable. And, not everybody is willing. And some people are comfortable enough to stay where they are. And that's
Yeah.
fine because
Yeah.
the only human on this planet who has to get up and live my life is me. And it's the same for
Totally.
everybody else. So
Totally.
I have a question for you. You said near the beginning of this episode that when you were navigating divorce, navigating it freshly, you had a folder on your phone that was essentially your reference of the things that you were feeling unhappy about and wanted to change.
Yeah.
As you've progressed through this journey of getting more in touch with Avril, figuring out what you want, what's important to you, do you have a new kind of folder on your phone now reminding you of where you're at and what you're looking for now?
That is a really good question. And ChatGPT, my bestie, and I have sort of put together like the shopping list, but I haven't probably been as intentional around that idea of like manifestation and like really being focused and kind of visualizing certain things. Um, but I think what does come up for me is that it's probably a lot of stuff that just is now naturally sitting in my gut and heart space. So there's an awareness for me without having to reference an actual written list. So it feels definitely more internal right now and more natural, which I think is, yeah, pretty cool. And I didn't actually think about that until you've asked me that question.
But maybe it's not even necessary, because if you're feeling it, if it's more internalized, I think that's quite
Yeah.
beautiful as well.
Totally, totally. And I do want to say there is also in the sort of healing process, and I think through stuff like this, it's easy for people to blame their partners and, oh, they did this and it's their fault and blah, 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 blah. But I think part of the healing journey that's important that I've realized as well is me taking accountability for the way I showed up and my role in the breakdown of the marriage. And I think there are a lot of things now that I reflect on. I go, actually, I would handle certain things so much more differently. And I think that also will help me in future relationships because of my maturity and growth that I've had and reflection over the last year.
What a beautiful awareness to have.
Mm,
What a,
yeah.
that's a really beautiful and bold thing to be able to say and space to be in. And I think it's an amazing testament to the work that you're doing in this process whilst riding that Dayton roller coaster. Okay, to close us off for the
Yes.
episode, is there any funny, ridiculous, or crazy Dayton story that you want to share? Anything, if there is one, because anybody who's been in the dating pool for long enough has some stuff on the bookshelf.
Yes, absolutely. So there is one, and it actually happened fairly recently. I decided in my grand, sort of courageous moment of doing things differently and trying new things, oh, let's try some speed dating. It's a curated kind of an event. You hope that the people putting the event together have some sort of intentionality behind it. Anyways, go to the speed dating event, and the women there were really amazing. I think a really good high caliber of woman. The guys maybe less intentionally curated. Let's just put it like that. And a guy sits across from me, and he's talking like this, and I'm like, sorry. And then he sort of started talking, and he was, no, he's been stressing about this event for the longest time. He's the biggest introvert. This is obviously him being so far out of his comfort zone. But, here he was trying this new thing. And I'm just grateful for a couple of things in myself that I can literally talk to anything and anyone. I can talk to a wall. I mean, I don't expect it to respond, but I can make conversation with anybody. And the next thing I don't know if it was a cough or a sneeze, and there was a ball of something that came out of his person and landed on his hand. And in this moment, For me, it's more about, oh my gosh, shame, this poor oak. I would be mortified. I'm worried about the embarrassment factor for him. So now I'm trying to downplay everything. And I just keep him, just look him in the eyes. Don't look anywhere else. Don't look at the
Don't
ball.
look down.
And he obviously noticed. So now he looked at me to see if I noticed. And he just took the ball like this and he just rolled it around his hand. And then he put his hand down. And then he proceeded to answer or talk about whatever we were talking about. So in that moment, I deserved an Oscar for straight face, continue the conversation, nothing to see here. But I really did feel for this guy. And yeah, it was a bit like an episode of Love on the Spectrum, I guess.
Shame. I mean, it's honestly that kind of thing can happen to any of us.
Exactly.
But how do you, and kudos to you for just eyes up, maintain eye contact, just stay focused. Kudos for that.
And hope to hell that he does not try and shake my hand at the end of our 5-minute session. I don't know what I would have done then. I have hygiene issues. That would have really been a stretch for me. A stretch too far. I'd be like, Knuckles.
But just imagine how well bonded you would have been if you had.
Schnot brothers. Not blood brothers, Schnot brothers. Oh, shame.
On that delicious,
delightful, uplifting note.
Hey, these are the things we navigate as humans attempting to date other humans in this world.
Exactly. And again, compassion, you know.
100% is these things happen. These are human moments. Let's just show up with some compassion for one another in them.
Yes. And they make great stories.
Absolutely.
Want to be entertaining as well. There is a bit of clown in me still.
Hey, look, we have to look on the bright side of this as well. And the light side too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Avril, I really want to thank you for being open and having this conversation. It's an important, courageous, beautiful journey that you're walking. We've laughed, we've had serious moments, we've had some meaningful moments of reflection, and I appreciate you being willing to have this conversation with me.
I appreciate the opportunity. It feels like therapy for me, actually.
Because we really did think that this would be simpler.
Absolutely. It is not.
No. Avril, thank you so much.
Thank you.